Alright, alright. Hey guys, how's it going? Let me know if the audio is a bit too loud for you. We're trying some ambience today. But how are we doing on this fine Sunday? I know I've had a relaxing day, so I thought why not start off today's stream with some creepypasta tales. Because I know that's why you're all here. Maybe. But hi, Kara. How are you? Sure you've gone to bed now, Scott, but thanks for stopping by. That's always appreciated. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the setup. Did you all have a good weekend? I had a pretty chill one. Started some streaming. We may have some guests later on today. Later on in the stream for another round of Would You Rather. I did figure out how to clip a piece from yesterday's stream, so that's somewhere on my channel too. The lovely jingle you heard was from a lovely person called Sugar on Twitter, and I've linked their Twitter in my bio. If you click the jellyfish in there, you'll be taken to their Twitter page, so go and shower them with a lot of love. That's always appreciated. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun day. I'm gonna read a couple. A few people who are part of Raven's Hollow Discord server. I usually run a story time there. This is where I started actually. I did a story time a few days a week on my Discord. And it became quite popular. I do a mix of Grimm's fairy tales and creepypastas because I like creepypastas. And apparently I can even make a story sound creepy, and I have a nice voice apparently. But yeah, super glad that people could be here. My lovely moderator Crumbs was amazing enough to set up my lovely, what are they called? Shortcuts, I guess, commands. Which is super fun. You'll find, obviously, my Discord. You know, we always welcome you to Raven's Hollow. It is a fun, creative server for artists, writers, streamers, the like of all sorts. And I do host my story times there. But I thought for spooky season, we have to bring creepypastas over here, right? And I mean, it fits. I do wonder though, are some of you doing anything special for Halloween? Are you gonna dress up? Are you gonna go trick-or-treating? I've been invited to a Halloween party, but on Halloween itself, I do plan to have a few lovely streamers come, and I think we'll do a spooky story night around the campfire. That would be fun, right? But yes. I keep getting, my leg keeps vibrating because I have my Twitter notifications up. A few people have liked my stuff. I'm very happy. I'm doing well for myself. I'm 10 away from 50 followers, so we're slowly on our way to affiliate. About halfway there now. A few more bits and that'll be good. An affiliate means emotes. I've got some lovely jellyfish emotes to give you guys. And we get to do some redeems. So if any of you have any suggestions for redeems, do let me know. I have promised dear old lamb that we will do a tea redeem, because I'm known for my tea. So yeah, there's that. I'm not sure what else we would want to pop on there, but if any of you have suggestions what you'd like to see for redeems when I hit affiliate, you're free to let me know on any of my platforms. They're all linked around. So I have both of Mr. Creepypasta's books. He scoured the wide dark web and found many tales that he enjoyed reading, and compiled them into some books. You can actually find these books on Amazon. I do highly recommend doing so. Purchase them if you can. They're really enthralling. Also, if you have any creepypastas you think that I'd enjoy reading, let me know. That would be awesome. But I hope you have your snacks. I hope you have your drinks. Oh, thank you, Rosa, for the follow. How are you? Let me do you a... How was I not following? I know, sweetie. Joey said he can't make it today, so it's really nice you've popped over. Let me give you a shout out, see if I can figure this out. Hey, there we go. You get a nice shout out, Rosa. Hi. Yeah, Joey said he's unable to make it today for modding, but it's okay. I'm figuring stuff out. Apologize if you still hear me cough a bit. I'm getting used to recovering from it, but it's fine. We're all human, or are we? Nobody knows. But yes, it's so nice to see you, Rosa. I do hope you have been settling into your new place. Oh, thank you so much. I've recently redesigned her. And she's all set up and she looks very pretty. She's ready for game night. This is a nice game night attire. We have some would you rathers. Definitely a human, not a kebab. We know, Kara. I mean, it states so in the Discord server. You have your own role for that, sir. Oh dear. But yes, it's so nice to see you, Rosa. I do hope you settled in your new place with your mom. I know moves can be stressful. I hope that's all sorted for you. All goods. Goods. But I hope you're taking time as well, Kara, to rest as well. I know your studies have been super stressful on you. So please make sure you take the time to eat and stuff. You've been settling in nicely, but you lost... Oh no! Oh, I'm really sorry for your loss, Rosa. It's never easy losing somebody. But you do know my DMs are always open to you. You're gonna leave for work. Oh, you managed to find a place? I'll leave you tab, Jelly Mom. Hi, Kit. How are you doing? You did. I hope you got plenty of sleep earlier. But yes. Let me give lovely Kit a shout out too. I'm learning. You've been dealing your daily affirmations. That is great. Please tell me that went through, or did I not do it right? Oh, it's an O. It's an O. Yeah. Silly me. But yeah, I'm hoping you're finding the daily affirmations in the server helpful, Rosa. And also, yes, please go and show Kit some love. was watching their Phasmophobia stream today. It's still living in my Steam wishlist. But it's fun to watch. The suspense is very scary. I'm glad it has been helpful. But again, remember, you can talk to me anytime. Doesn't matter. My DMs are always open to everyone. And I want you to make sure you're still eating and drinking, because self-care is very important. And over in the Raven's Hollow, I make sure all my jellies are definitely taking care of themselves. Also, you can thank Kit for the lovely community name for you all. You're the Jelly Babies. Because I'm obsessed with jellyfish. And Kit dubbed me the Jelly Mama. So I was like, okay, I like it. I'm not gonna change that. But the community will be known as the Jelly Babies in future. And welcome. I'm not sure what to call the community. Maybe the Hollow, Raven's Hollow, because it started from that. Joey, Star, T, and Tyra. Oh, Tyra's a new name. Get to meet those. I will be meeting them in future, I assume, because all your partners are lovely. Recently met T. Star brought them to Storytime last week, and such a lovely, lovely being. Such wholesome people. You'll have to introduce me to Tyra at some point. Gotta make sure that they're taking care of you. She's very sweet. I should hope so. We like sweet people. Of course. So are you all comfortable for our first tale? I will be remembering to take breaks as well, so I can get a drink, go to the bathroom. Oh, Raylene, of course. I absolutely love Raylene. She is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Pegasus. I absolutely adore her, to be honest. Why don't we give? I do. Oh, why is she not here? Okay, I can only shout out people who are in chat. That's great. But I do recommend people going to search up Raylene, the lovely Pegasus. She is an adorable VTuber. But I will be remembering to take my breaks for reading. Because you know me, I tend to fight on. But I have a lovely intermission stream that we'll have for breaks, which means everybody has to take breaks. So, are we ready to delve into the tales of the creepypasta? I can type out her name? Oh. If I remember it, I will do so. But yes. So I hope you're all ready. Another little toot. Xbox is fine. But today, we begin our tales with a story called A Dark Stretch of Road by Barnabas Demos. Driving. Melanie and Diana had been driving for days together. Recently married, the women had been traveling from Florida to California as a long and surprisingly stressless honeymoon. Somewhere in Arizona or possibly New Mexico. The two had been driving for quite some time along a dusty stretch of road. Miles and miles of nothing stretched in front of them as they ploughed down the deserted highway whose number both of them had forgotten. All they knew was that they were headed northwest along it. In the day, the road stretched on with nothing but dust and rock on either side, while ahead of them was a range of short, squat mountains they intended to cross. Now, after they had driven for so long, the sun had gone and abandoned the dust, rocks, and mountain, to be devoured by near total darkness on a moonless night. Only the small bit of starlight illuminated their world. Both talked and let the time pass as they drove. They were in no rush. Both slowly, but slowly they began to wonder when this stretch would end. Shouldn't we at least start feeling an incline? But white line fever often sinks in without you noticing it. Besides, they were enjoying their long overdue and well-deserved time together as wife and wife. As they drove and drove, their highway hypnosis finally gave way. They both saw it, and a dreadful feeling began to seep in, replacing the happy and carefree feelings they had felt along this trip. Each time they noticed it, Melanie would grab Diana's hand and squeeze it, a comforting motion to assuage the worry and dread nailed into them each time they saw the fuel gauge slowly drop and drop. They had been driving for so long, they should have gotten there already. Something was wrong. Did they misjudge the length? Did they not fill up before? Things simply did not add up. And like the inevitable swing of the reaper's scythe on all our mortal coils, the car began to slow as the gas that had turned to fumes turned to nothing. With a crunch on the gravel ground, the car stopped. Checking both their personal phones and Diane's work cell phone, they found, not much to their surprise, that signal was non-existent. It wasn't really a shock considering they had suffered dead spots often on the drive thus far. So, the conversation began as to what to do. Stay in the car or walk forward. A compromise was reached. They would walk forward a bit to see if, by some stroke of luck, there was a sign of civilization close by, or even perhaps a roadside assistance call box. Granted, it was nearly pitch black out, without a small bit of ambient light. The road was a black stretch touched by oceans of deep purples and blues dotted with shadows. It was still rather warm outside, and they both felt that the fresh air could be good for them. They did their best to make fun of the situation by joking and being playful in order to ignore the possibilities of their unfortunate situation. The two trod on for but a few minutes before the car was out of sight. They discussed whether they should turn around and go back, and each time they did, the discussion ended with, "Just a little longer, just a little bit further." And so they went on farther and farther, wrapped up in their quest and in each other, not noticing much else, until it snuck up on them. Clouds, thick, rolling clouds, spread across the sky, blotting out the already feeble starlight with their inky black. "Go back. We have to go back," they both agreed as the last bit of starlight was voided out. But as they walked back toward the car, they realized it was far too late for such a choice. Blackness stretched before them, behind them, above them. The only way they knew the other was there was by their clasped hands and breathing. "We'll eventually get to the car," they thought. "Just keep a straight line and we'll get there." On they walked, but nothing broke up the monotonous, pitch-black world. Worry, panic, fear, and frustration seeped into their voices. Only the fact that they held each other's hand through it and knew the other was there kept them from devolving into abject loss and hopelessness. It felt like an eternity. Then, light. A small flicker of light springing to life in short bursts, then finally stabilizing to a constant one. It appeared to be a roadway light, which meant that something was there, or at least nearby. At least, They hoped so. The women ran to it, toward the light, bobbing up and down in their sprint toward what felt like a light of salvation. As they got closer, they noticed the night was so dark that the light barely illuminated the ground beneath it, and it didn't even shine on its own post. They ran to it regardless. If nothing else, at least they could sit below it until daybreak. They both ran up to it, and underneath the feeble light, they embraced, not even realizing the ground was wet, though it had not rained. They lost themselves in a celebratory and relieved kiss, so relieved that they didn't mind the strong smell. Suddenly, the light bobbed a bit. They both looked up. Two bulbous, cloudy white eyes were revealed by the moving light. The tongue they were standing on moved. The light went out. The wives screamed, holding each other as the monstrous jaws they had walked into slammed shut. I hope that one was an interesting one. Short, but a little interesting. Don't forget to have a hydration. I love interesting stories like that. It reminds me of the SpongeBob movie when they ran away from the big anglerfish. That's it. But yes. That is. It was an interesting story. It was chilling. But makes you think what was out there. But definitely gives off SpongeBob movie vibes. Like when the anglerfish made a little ice cream stand to lure them in. But it would have to be land-based, wouldn't it? Oh, definitely. I hope it sounded good with the music in the background. That's what I like. Let's see. Yes. Let's see what other stories I have in my arsenal for you today. Are you ready for another one, chat? Oh, I'm so glad you liked it. I've been trying to find some nice ambient music to fit spooky season. You know, of course, that we can use on streams. Yeah, I specifically look for like Halloween and scary, like non-copyright tunes to try and add some stuff to it. I kept my nice upbeat one for starting soon in the intermission because that was a really nice surprise by someone on Twitter, Sugar Pop Lemon. Yes, please. I'm glad you think so. So, this story is called A Trick of Perspective by Matt Dymowski. They were very good at hiding in plain sight. The human brain only perceives summaries and expectations, and they use that to their utmost advantage. A man in a gorilla costume can walk across a video of athletes passing basketballs without the viewer noticing. The creatures I'm talking about can skitter right on by when they know you won't be paying attention, Your awareness is their plaything. Ever thought you saw a face in the shadows? You absolutely did. And it was watching you right back. They're not magic, and they're not spirits. They are physically present, with bodies you might accidentally brush up against, and probably have. That's the key though, and their primary strength. You just don't realise it when it happens. Even if you somehow sense you're not alone and you become alert, you'll expect the warm limb of a human assailant or the chill void of a ghost, but neither trigger will come. Truth is, you could be backed up against one right at this moment and you wouldn't know it. Because the brain interprets most every sensation as something familiar and benign. You could turn your head and the entity behind you would have already anticipated that and moved to the next place you're not looking. The damn thing's not even quiet. You just don't know what to listen for. Imagine this. Go back to a memory of a sunny day and recall a bird chirping outside your window. Yes, it's daytime. Did you think light would save you? The creatures in question have no association with shadows and darkness. If they did, I might hazard a guess as to what the hell they are. No, there's no easy safety in light here. Now, the same way that you hear a spoken word and slowly transform it into another word in your mind's eye by analysing and reanalyzing it, listen to that chirping bird. You didn't even notice it before, did you? Deprioritized by your traitor neurons, it slid right past your awareness. A foreign stranger speaks a word with a heavy accent. At first, it means nothing. You frown, you concentrate, and you look at his moving mouth for clues. Moment to moment, the word changes shape, and as you turn it and study it, suddenly you have it. You smile in agreement, and from that point on, the memory of his first speaking has changed. You can't hold on to what you first thought you heard. Your brain has literally edited your understanding of your present and your past. But what if the choice it made was wrong? There's every possibility the chirps you heard outside your window on that summer day can morph the same way, back to what they really were. Don't think too hard on it. I first became aware of their existence when I was 14. As I've laid out, they're extremely good at hiding in plain sight. But every process has a non-zero failure rate. It might be 1 in a million, or even 1 in a billion, but it will happen. I was that unlucky failure. There was still half of the backyard left to mow, and my interests did not extend beyond finishing my torturous chore and running back to my video games. I was innocent. I was just a kid. I was listening to the birds chirping on a summer day. My mind wandered. I thought of my future in some unknown college. I thought of my past as a child young enough to avoid chores, and I thought of my present. The birds didn't have any responsibilities. They just hung out all day, flew around as they pleased, and talked all the time in song. Nobody else would have randomly focused on the lilting sounds the way I did. I didn't stop to listen more closely. I didn't look around and smile at the beautiful weather. I just kept my eyes ahead of the mower and tried to hear what I could hear over the roar of its engine. I gave no outward indication whatsoever that my attention had shifted, and that was what led to its mistake. The longer my mind delved down beneath the blanketing sound of the mower, the more I could hear the birds. The closer I focused on the birds, the more I lost hold of the sound in my mind. It was very close to typical bird song at first, but then continually lost fractions of its normalcy and beauty second by second until it became distorted, alien, and haunting. I could understand how I thought I was listening to birds, but now I struggled to process what sounded like wind moving through a series of twisted holes designed to mimic other noises in the environment. Ooh! Scared me there. Hello, Sugar Pop. Hello, darling. How are you? My mind's eye envisioned a strange organic stick of some sort, hollow in many avian ways, whose bones and hole-ringing muscles were open to the air to allow oral camouflage. This image came to me as if from a half-forgotten nightmare. I've lost where I read there for a minute. Airflow, oral camouflage. I saw crepe pasta. Oh, of course, creepy pasta, yep. We're in the middle of reading a trip of perspective. This image came to me as if from some half-forgotten nightmare, nausea-inducing, imminently threatening, and vaguely familiar. My moment of unconscious action came when I realised there was no breeze. To make continual noises like that, the unknown bone and muscle stick would have to be moving. To be moving, it would have to be a leg. I erupted from my blank stare focus within a moment's warning and flung my arm around faster than I could look. My hand closed on what I immediately recognised as a tree branch, and I was already relaxing in that split second that it took to swing my vision around to see what I'd only thought it was a tree branch. It had presented that texture to me by tensing mottled patches of skin clinging to the black exoskeleton bone I'd gripped. I stared in awe and horror as it rotated interpretations in front of me. An umbrella that last night's storm had thrown in from a neighbour's yard, a large bush that I had somehow forgotten about, and even a stick I'd managed to blindly catch right out of a surprised dust devil. But I wasn't letting go. Rings of muscle closed around some of my fingers, bringing that horrible nightmare-born image right back to the forefront of my awareness. And I knew the thing was alive and aware. It jerked away twice, escaping on the second, and I stared after it as the shifting shadows of clouds made a weird pattern between the houses, and a truck drove by on the road until it was out of sight. Both the pattern and the truck had been tricks of perspective. I grabbed my head and struggled with the memories. My brain wanted to interpret them away, but I knew I had to hold on. I'd just seen something horrible, beyond understanding, and I couldn't let that knowledge sink under my stream of consciousness and vanish. I managed to get inside the house and write down what I could before I came too unsure of myself. How had it so expertly presented stimuli of colours, light and sound to me that I'd nearly interpreted away my awareness of it? I came to the conclusion that it had been watching me in particular quite some time, and learning my senses, my behaviour, and the lay of my nervous system. What else could I believe? If it was just that good at manipulating everyone all the time, what hope did I have of figuring out what it was? I looked things up on the internet most of the night, but found no real corroborating stories. Next morning, I came up against its second line of defence. Memories, imaginings, and dreams are all indistinguishable. In the safety of my bed, the nightmarish encounter seemed Nothing but a fleeting series of random sensations. Had I dreamed it? It had happened. I went out there and completed my chore before my father noticed the unfinished task. But I remained wary at all times. There was no way to know if that creature had been real, but if so, there was a good possibility that it was hostile. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, and every sound made me jump. For weeks, I was stressed beyond belief, and there was nobody I could tell. Each day began blurring into the next, as they tend to do, and I was eventually forced to relax my guard. Without proof, there was no other choice. Thinking back to it, I wasn't able to be sure it had been real. The mutable nature of memory continually stole details away from me, until all I had was a story I kept telling myself about what had happened. When the only thing you have left to believe is your own insistence that something insane occurred, well, that's when you have to worry about being crazy. Occasionally, I would still go down unexpected streets or look in random directions, but these actions produced no results. If the creature had been real, it had probably taken my unexpected randomness into account after the first failure. Or maybe it was staying away from me to avoid giving me a chance to be certain. Once was an inexplicable and weird experience. Twice would be a prompt for action. As bad luck would have it, I'd been right about two things. There were more of them, and they did adapt to specific people and communities. That was the cause of my second experience. I was 20 and in college by then, and I'd firmly put the whole thing behind me as a sort of scary story I'd brewed up as a child. My friends and I had gone camping, and we were deep in the woods of the state park, sitting around a fire at night. There was nothing around but the flames, the beers, my friends, our tents, and the trees, until a falling meteor lit up the night as it burned out just above the distant horizon. My friends all reeled and cheered. I just stared across the fire at the darkness and the woods beyond. The meteor had been a totally unpredictable event, not predicted on the actions of any earthly beings, and thus our silent watcher had been slow to adjust. Under the meteor's 3 seconds of shifting light, I stared directly into the complex, multi-orbed eyes of the enemy. Excuse me. Did it know that I knew? Did it see light the way we did? In many unintentional ways, I prepared for this moment for years. I kept my heart rate and breathing normal and made no move. Not even with my eyes. That might give away my awareness. And now I was certain, in that single moment, years of self-doubt and cognitive dissonance vanished. But the creature had not come for me. I drank beers and told stories and laughed with the rest of the group, while secretly amazed at how blatantly obvious this thing was now that I had noticed it. It often circled the camp in the darkness and, with the corner of my sight, I kept track of it until I knew who it was most interested in. One of our friends was the governor's son, a fact that he made known often and loudly, but the person most often studied was actually his girlfriend. Now, I had become the secret observer. I did not intervene as she walked off to the woods to look for the campground's outhouse, and it followed. She didn't come back. Her boyfriend had passed out by that time, and our group had begun the process of splitting up into different tents. Her absence was not truly noticed until the next morning. I was not stupid enough to mention what I knew to the police. They figured she'd wandered off into the forest and gotten lost and hurt. I certainly wasn't going to tell them I'd seen a living horror follow her into the darkness. They sent out some search parties, but, as they expected, they found no trace of her. The case was closed, and the official story was that she had likely run off on purpose to start a new life. The biggest concern that tumbled around in my thoughts that year was, why her? And why not me? I'd grabbed one, even seen it face to face, and it had retreated. She wasn't a danger to them, while I'd known about them for years. Or perhaps my previous uncertainty had meant I was not a threat. As I studied to be an engineer, I realised that every system had a failure rate. I couldn't be the only one that had seen them. There were many layers of defence. Oh, and they couldn't simply eliminate every single person who did. There were many layers of defence. Most of all, the lack of proof and fallibility of memory. And I had to guess that many people had seen something strange or inexplicable in their lives, but written it off later out of confusion. Above all, normal people didn't want to believe that such horrific creatures existed, let alone that they walked freely around the streets of the neighbourhoods of mankind. And walk freely they did. Now that I knew what to look and listen for, I began to sense them almost everywhere. They stood most often in places that were close but untrodden, grass islands in parking lots, walkways between buildings, and high rooftops. They could fold their 8 limbs and disjointed bodies into strange shapes and adjust their appearance and texture to blend in. The most astounding ability I observed was the fact that they could just adjust to multiple people at once. I talked to a friend on the way to class once, while I observed a nearby creature using light and shade from my perspective at one angle and a different pattern inlaid on its folded up body from my friend's perspective, to create a multifactored optical illusion that words simply can't do justice to. It was these camouflage tactics that creatures used, along with incredibly intimate knowledge of each person's particular senses, to hide in plain sight as a tree, a shadow, a car, or anything else they somehow knew would be instinctively written off and ignored. But they didn't always hide. Saying and doing nothing, I watched as they took 2 more people I vaguely knew over the next 4 years. These weren't direct acquaintances, but people I subtly chose to be around more often because of the increased activity of the creatures around them. In fact, the more I came to understand these strange beasts, the more I was able to evade and watch them myself in exactly the manner they had once done to me. About 48 hours before a disappearance, 3 of the creatures would visit the person in question, and that person's handler, to closely examine something about him or her. I managed to get there before the process began for the 4th time in my experience, and I hid 2 yards over in a dense group of trees and watched with binoculars. While one creature waited and watched in the corner of the bedroom, the visiting triad leaned over the sleeping girl and did something delicate with their long appendages. While most of the segments of their limbs were full of exposed muscles and air holes for stealthy movements, the end points were incredibly sharp, almost surgical. It was at that moment that 2 questions presented themselves to me. First, what did I really think I could do about this, even if I logged enough of their behaviour to create proof? They could simply eliminate me if I spoke up. Second, how did these creatures know their victims would be somewhere alone 48 hours from that moment? Without fail, even though the decision sometimes seemed random, these people ended up somewhere solitary. It wasn't mind control, it was worse. Everything the creatures did was about data and prediction. As a full-time engineer for several years by that point, I'd begun to understand what they were doing, A human being has the capacity for creativity and inspiration, but we are, each of us, largely predictable in our daily lives. Watch someone long enough, and you can guess at their future actions. This girl had been watched for a very long time, and they knew she would be alone and vulnerable in 48 hours. It was always done in such a way that no mysteries were left behind. If she was asleep in her bed in a locked house, the disappearance would raise questions. Keeping incognito in a large coat and low hat, I watched her for the next 2 days, noting her handler's subtle new quivering behaviour. Was it excited? The thought of that thing growing excited, or whatever it was about to do, turned my fear into anger. The hour approached. She was up later than usual because she'd been at a bar with friends, and now she was walking home by herself. Other drunk people were on the street with her. How did they intend to... Her phone rang. Answering it, she turned left down a quieter street. She spoke to someone she liked on the other end. It was not a trick. How the hell had they predicted that? Just how deep did their data extend? My mind ran endlessly over the insane requirements of it all. They would have to have had complete behaviour profiles, not just for the girl and her caller, but for every drunk on the street, every person who had been at the bar, and every driver in the area. Of course, they had long-term and detailed data on all of those people. It was what they did. It was all they did. Day in and day out, slinking around behind us, watching, logging, studying. Bastards knew everything about us. I shouted a warning. The girl turned around suddenly and stared right into the face of her attacker. Smooth, chitinous plates over unidentifiable pulsing fleshy sacs of nodes, all set under complex insectoid eyes. Obviously, she screamed. It didn't go after her as she ran for her life. Instead, it whipped its head around and stood high on its segmented limbs. The creatures were usually low or folded in some manner, so the sight of it cresting 10 feet high broke my resolve, and I, too, ran. A strange call went out, much like the horn of a truck, and I knew it was calling others to the hunt. I had enough wherewithal to realise that running into the chill night would mean death. I dashed into the street and slowed to a walk among the drunks, leaving the bars in loud and laughing groups. My jacket was bulky, and the brim of my hat mostly hid my face. Would the creatures know who I was? I altered my gait and focused on the unconscious behaviours of my body in an attempt to avoid fitting any data they had on me. Would my very pattern of breathing give me away? But drunks were not the defence I thought they were. Their attention was minimal and scattered, and multiple shadows began lurking at the edge of my oasis, moving inexorably closer as they found vectors where nobody was paying attention. They could pick me right out of the middle of the crowd, and the drunks would never notice. I needed inspiration. Another group stumbled out of a nearby bar and merged with ours in a stream. I punched one direction and moved another within the sea of people. Men began shoving and shouting, and I ducked, slipped my jacket and hat off, and left them on the street. I laughed and shouted along with the other human beings around. It was time to see how well my pursuers could pay attention. My joviality became real as the tightening noose slackened. These were field observers, not the data handlers. And they didn't have profiles to compare with each of us to root out which one of us had been the deviant. Every single one of us was sweaty, red-faced, loud, and kinetic. A man in a gorilla suit could have walked through us at that moment without the creatures noticing. All I needed to do was drift away, as all the bar-goers eventually did, and, if I wasn't followed, I was home free. Of the 24 of us out there, on the orange-lit sidewalk. 4 creatures would have to choose only a 6 of us to follow. Those were better odds than I could have hoped for. But my luck came up short. One of them slipped after me as I slipped away from the crowd. I couldn't return home and let it know who I was. Worse, it had freedom now to get creative. It took on the flashing blue and red qualities of an approaching police cruiser at the corner of my vision, just enough to get a normal drunk to turn around in surprise. And it knew it had me, and I panicked and ran instead. I ducked under a rusted fence, dashed through a construction area, and took many hard turns in a suburban area. But I eventually found myself knocked to my knees in a dark yard. The shadow of the monstrous creature loomed over me, and I felt the surgically sharp end of one of those limbs race gently across my throat, just enough to scrape, but not to kill. With that, it departed. At first, I was terrified and confused, but then I understood. They knew who I was now. They didn't need to kill me. My little rebellion had been cut short because my hidden behaviour would now be included in their data. I would never be able to interfere again. What to do then? I've waited and watched for a number of years since, now only aware of disappearances through internet articles and social media posts. I go to my job, I work, I go home, and I watch TV. I've dated. I assume I'll get married and have kids someday. But always they lurk, watching, waiting, and surgically slicing away specific people from the fabric of our communities. I write this now because of an offhand comment from an old acquaintance I ran into this week. It was the governor's son I used to hang out with, and he told me that his father had been considering running for Senate all those years ago, but had opted not to because of our friend's disappearance in the wood. Now that speaks to me of something far greater and far more sinister than even I had guessed. How far ahead do they see? How long have they been watching us, editing us? We might rise up enraged as a species if glorious world leaders or local kind-hearted souls were to disappear. But we think nothing of the impact the removal of unimportant individuals have on those around them. Before the person who might save us from those creatures can even become a leader, someone close to them and important to them can be excised, and therefore none of us are the wiser that we've lost someone amazing. I know now why they've let me live, and even why they're letting me write this. First, they seek submission and hopelessness, and I have long submitted and given up hope. Second, they know you won't believe me, and they know that, even if you did, you would submit and give up hope too. You are like me, bandied about in a world of apathy, distraction, and pointlessness. On the off chance you feel like doing something about it, don't. Don't look behind you, don't start paying attention. Most of all, don't start thinking about why things are the way they are. If you're the type of person who might wake up and look around, I guarantee you there are eyes on you at this very moment, and those ghastly eyes see more than you ever will. They know absolutely everything about you, can punish you before you even begin to attempt to resist. As for how to pass the time in our shared invisibility captivity, I can recommend some really good TV shows. And that's the end of that one. Oh, I hope you enjoyed that one. Hello, Joey. How are you? And hi, Sugar Pop. Thank you so much for the jingle. I've included your Twitter in my About Me page. Ooh. Just needing a drink there. Yes, I hope you enjoy that one. Oh. Needed a drink for a moment there. But hi. Let me give you a shout out, Sugar. There we go. And people will come and stop by and look at that. And your Twitter is in my About Me. The lovely jingles for the intermission and for the starting soon screen. I'm going to take a 10-15 minute break. I'll put you on the nice intermission screen. So make sure you get up and stretch your legs. Have a drink, because I know I need a drink at the moment. And I'll leave you with the intermission screen, and I will be back in about 10-ish minutes. Okay. are back. Hello, lovelies. Did you enjoy your little break? Did you get yourself some nice drinks and food? Did you have a stretch? Stretches are important. I snacked on a couple of sweets. Thank you. Yeah, I was like, need to give my voice a rest for a minute. I had a check on Twitch to see who was streaming for later, so we could raid someone. I do have a fabulous person in mind, so I dropped them a follow so I could raid them later with you guys. So that's gonna be cool. You fed the critters. I'm so glad. Did you feed yourself though? You make sure to feed yourself too, even if it's a snack. I ate a couple of milk bottle sweets, which is nice. Yes. So let's see. Are you ready for more creepy pastas? I hope you are. I do have other plans for things in the future. But we'll have to see. I'm considering reacting to some funny videos at some point too. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. How my dinosaur of a laptop runs. We had some issues for a stream with games, but I'm finding my niche of where we're going, and I'm super happy for the journey. I'm very thankful that you guys are coming along with me. Always super happy about that. And I'll figure out like a schedule for myself once I hit affiliate. I'm sort of pushing myself to get there at the moment. So it's slow and steady. But the sooner I get there, the sooner I can make a decent schedule for myself. But we're all hands a-blazing. Alright, let's see what other stories I have to tell you today. So this one is called Down in the Library Basement by Rona Vasilar. Running a library is not an easy thing to do. You'd be surprised at the number of people who think that all librarians do is sit around and read the whole day. They have no concept of all the duties that come with being a librarian. In just one day, my mother will teach a class for senior citizens on how to use the computer, help 4 different families find the graves of their loved ones, register 1,000 new books into the system, reorder all the books that have been returned, hold a story time session for the children. The list goes on and on. The point of me telling you this is for you to understand that it takes a person with a degree and years of experience to run a library. And I am not that person. My mom has run our small town's library for over 20 years. She's damn good at what she does. And that's the only reason our town still has a library. Unfortunately, this meant that it was difficult to replace her, even for a short amount of time, when she fell down the basement stairs and broke her leg. I should have suspected something was up, and she called me home. I'm a freelance writer, so it's not difficult for me to come back to rural Minnesota at a moment's notice. You'll understand, however, that I don't do it very often. I rarely have any shred of desire to return to my hometown. I need you to watch over the library for me until I can go back to work. When my mom said that, it wasn't a request so much as an order. It was easy to tell from the set look in her eyes that she had already mentally decided I would be taking over for her, regardless of any request of mine. As the librarian's daughter, I knew better than anyone how difficult her job is. I blanched when she asked me and said, "Mom, there's no way." I don't know how to register books. I don't know how to use the system. My mom waved her hand dismissively. That's not a problem. You won't have to register any books. You can just check them out, which you've done before. Another librarian from Rock County will be coming once a week to register any new books and fix anything you might have screwed up. I wanted to scowl at that, but I held back, mostly because it was true. For the most part, I need you to deal with patrons, help them find books, help them with research, keep the computers up and running. You do realise you're asking me to do the impossible, right? I deadpanned. My mum sighed. Look, I know this isn't ideal, but it's only for a few weeks until my leg is better. I just need you to keep things afloat. You know, if there was anyone qualified to do this, I'd ask them. As it is, you're the closest to a qualified librarian this town has, aside from me. You've grown up with the library, and you know the basics of how it works. You can do this. I gave my mum a sceptical look, but she just returned it with an encouraging smile. I sighed as she began to give me a rundown on my duties as her stand-in. There were so many details that I actually had to take notes. By the 4th or 5th page, I was convinced that she was setting me up for failure. Just do your best. You'll be fine, she said. Yeah, right. The first day at the library was utter and complete hell, mixed in with some chaos and a healthy dose of self-loathing. I followed my mom's instructions to the letter, but even that was a paltry comfort. Make sure you have story time in the morning. It starts promptly at 9 a.m. Usually, I love kids, but not when I'm the one who has to try to keep them in line. And they never stop talking. It took me 15 minutes to get to the 4th page of the stupid picture book I'd picked out. Something about a dumb jellyfish that lost his glasses. Jellyfish don't even need glasses, you little shits. Try to run a virus scan on each computer before noon. If one computer goes down, the rest are sure to follow. Trust me. Of course it would be my luck that the computers would all crash on my first day. I called the town's resident IT guy, a man from across the country who proved to be distinctly unhelpful. I could probably get in to fix them later this week, he said. Oh, perfect. Computerless for a week. I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but apparently my threats were frightening enough to get him in within the hour. He carefully avoided me as he fixed the computers. Some patrons might need help with genealogy research. Just do the best you can. Even with the websites my mum provided, it was near impossible to find these people. My great-great-grandmother's name was Ethel. Can you find her for me? I can try. What's her last name? Oh, I'm not sure, but I know she lived in a red house. I see. Any other information? She was a witch. I'm trying to find her spell book. Right. Some kids will probably be coming in to find books for school. They have a reading program in school, and they have to earn a certain number of points in a semester by reading books in their reading level. Make sure to get them books appropriate for both their age and reading level. What do you mean my son shouldn't read A Clockwork Orange? Screamed the soccer mum, her long manicured nails tapping on the library desk. Her 8-year-old son stood a little ways away, browsing the sports book. It's just not age appropriate, ma'am. I'll have you know, my son is damn smart and he can read whatever he wants. Ma'am, about half of this book is about rape and the other half is about murder, I said, losing patience. What? She shrieked, throwing the book down on the counter in disgust. Why on earth would the school recommend such filth? And why do you offer it here? Really, I expect more from a public institution like this. So, like I said, that first day was exceptionally long and brutal. The days after weren't much better. There were a few odd instructions that my mother had given me before sending me on my doomed mission. They were so strange, in fact, that I asked the hospital if they'd check my mum for a concussion, because she was obviously talking nonsense. She had to be. Every night, after you lock up, go down to the library basement. Make sure to take along a book of your choice. Give me anything. Then you'll need to sit down there and read aloud for at least half an hour. I blinked as I stared at my mum, giving me a stern look from her hospital bed. Am I supposed to record this, or... No, don't worry about that. Just go down there and read. Mom, there's nothing down there. It was true. The basement was a decrepit dust fest, complete with a bare concrete floor and rows of useless crap that never had been thrown away for some odd reason or another. It doesn't matter if there is or isn't anything down there. You just do as I said. Understand? She was rarely so harsh with me, so I agreed, making a big show of writing it down. She relaxed. Make sure you lock the doors before you leave, but leave one light on, the one by the front desk. If you remember, leave some candy behind too. She must have seen the look I was giving her, because she said, I know this all seems like an odd thing to ask, but it's very important, right? I couldn't say I was sure that my mother was completely sane, or that she hadn't conked her head hard enough to drive logic out the window. But she was looking at me as though this was the most important part of the job, so I gave a resigned nod and said, all right. The practice, however, was much harder than the theory, mostly because I really fucking hated going into that basement. The first night I went down, I grabbed my copy of Wuthering Heights, one of my favourite books, and descended the stairs, flicking on the light as I went. There was only one functioning light, in the basement. Hello, Luvic, hello, you scared me there, dude. Welcome. There was only one functioning light in the basement. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling that illuminated a tiny circular spot on the floor. I felt like I was stepping into the spotlight as I sat down in the chair my mother must have placed there. I sat in the total silence and cleared my throat. It was strange being down here alone. I really didn't like it. But I had a job to do, so I set a timer on my phone for 30 minutes and started reading. I stumbled a little at the beginning, the words jumbling together on their way out of my mouth, but soon I had found my groove and the narrative flowed just fine, my voice carrying throughout the damp basement. It made me nervous the way I broke the silence. It seemed wrong. I could feel my pulse hammering hard in my throat as I began to wish that I had just ignored my mother's instructions. I'm stupid. This is stupid. And I'm stupid for doing the stupid thing. Stupid. As I kept reading, I gradually became aware of the feeling of somebody watching me. Of course I'd feel that way. I mean, I was sitting in this creepy old basement, all alone, with barely even a light to keep me company, my voice echoing off the cement walls in total solitude. It's completely normal that I begin to feel creeped out, as though I wasn't really alone. Normal, but that didn't mean that I liked it. I was startled when my phone roared to life, its jingle signalling the end of my 30 minutes. Swallowing hard, I silenced the offending object and raced up the stairs, suddenly feeling that something was wrong, was going to slither out and drag me back down if I wasn't careful. I slammed the basement door shut and ran through the library, finishing everything as quickly as I could. I left the light on over the front desk. I'd bought a candy bar during lunch, the Milky Way if you're curious, and I left it on the desk. It looked like an offering to something. I couldn't stop shaking. I ran out the front door and locked it, checking and rechecking to make sure that I hadn't made a mistake. I won't lie, I was relieved after locking it. as though the extra barrier between myself and the basement would save me from something. It took me a full 10 minutes before I was calm enough to climb into my car and drive to my parents' house, where my mum and dad had set up my old room for as long as I'd be running the library. Dad was at the hospital with Mum, who hadn't come home yet, so I had the house to myself. I got drunk that night, prying open my dad's liquor cabinet and drinking whatever I laid my eyes on. I threw on some stupid sitcom and sat in the living room, all the lights on and the blanket drawn around me like a suit of armour. So ended the absolute worst first day of a job I'd ever had. That first week was anything but easy. On Tuesday, I made a kid cry during story time. On Wednesday, I caught one of the patrons trying to watch porn on the computer. On Thursday, the town pervert came in specifically to harass me, and I had to threaten to sic the police on him when he started bragging about his massive cock. On Friday, it rained and the roof leaked, ruined about a dozen good books that would have to be replaced. The one thing that got easier, at least, was the basement. At first, I'd been so confused as to why my mother had asked me to do all of these strange rituals. It was like she was trying to assuage a spirit or something. The moment that thought occurred to me, I realised what was happening. My mother, you see, is a big believer in ghosts. The library has always had its share of bad luck. Lights going out on their own, computers crashing, etc. And she must have started to believe that it had its own little haunting. Perhaps she thought that if she read to it, gave it offerings, things would go smoothly. After that, my nightly rituals actually became kind of fun. I started to imagine that the ghost my mum had been communicating with was another young woman, just like me. I picked out books that I thought she might like, read as books that I liked, and put more feeling into my readings. Occasionally I'd find myself talking to her absent-mindedly throughout the day. In the end, I even started believing she might actually be there. It started with the candy. As per my mother's request, I'd buy the elusive little spirit something as an offering. I started out with chocolate, and I'd throw it away in the morning. One night, however, I left a bag of Skittles, and the next morning it was gone. I'd scoured the library looking for some sign of the candy, but it was just gone. From then on, I started buying all different kinds of treats, seeing if I could get different results. Chocolates were usually left behind, but hard candies were almost always gone by the next day. After about 3 weeks, I decided that yes, there was a ghost, and I was beginning to understand its preferences. Maybe it seems that I'm being a little too cavalier about all this. After all, it's not every day that people decide they're dealing with ghosts and start messing around with them. Of course, you have to remember that I hadn't actually seen any ghosts. I just imagined that they must be there. To me, it was something of a game. I got to play make-believe and some forces that be played along. It was fun, if a little strange. That all changed one night just after closing, when I made the mistake of letting down my guard. Everyone in town knew that the library closed at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, and that day was a Thursday. It was already 8:30, and I was choosing a book. I'd just about decided on Little Women when I heard the bells above the door jingle and someone step inside the library. Now, I hadn't locked the door yet because, well, I didn't think I needed to. I can already hear you guys telling me how stupid I am, but cut me a little slack. After all, it's a small town, and nothing ever happens in small towns, right? Guess again. I peered out from the bookshelf I was standing near and saw the town pervert walking towards me. He had this big, shit-eaten grin on his face, and immediately I was on high alert. Let me give you a quick rundown on how this guy looks. He's massive. And I don't mean fat. He's ridiculously tall, with a fair amount of muscle bulging out of his ill-fitting and stained clothes. He lacked the capacity to understand personal hygiene, apparently, because his hair was always greasy and his breath smelled like the inside of a bat cave. He had a bad habit of getting inside a person's personal space and leering at her, his eyes travelling shamelessly over her body. It disgusted me. My mum had always warned me about this guy. We'll call him Chad, for the sake of anonymity. See, Chad would try to fuck anything that moved, regardless of age or circumstance. He'd been around since I was a kid, and he had often tried to convince both me and my older sister to come into his house and talk with him. Just for a moment, he had something nice to give us. He'd gotten kicked out of the library several times in the past for hitting on minors, or on my mother herself. He had wandering hands and no sense of decency, and at that moment I was alone with him. "You still working here for your ma, Cassie?" he asked easily, his steps not slowing as he approached me. I took a few instinctive steps back, putting the desk between us as a sort of barrier. Not that he couldn't work his way around that. I wondered if he'd been able to grab my mace from my purse. "You know I am, Chad," I snapped, already annoyed with him. "You know you're not supposed to be here after hours either. You need to leave right now." He gave me an easy smile. "I just want to talk to you, sweetie. We're friends, aren't we?" I felt a heave deep in my stomach at those words. I scanned my work area for my purse, but remembered all too late it wasn't there. Fuck, I'd left it in the car. "No, we're not friends. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to call the cops." Not that calling the cops would do much good. The reason people like Chad could still exist in a small community was that the cops were absolute shit. Still, I reached for the phone anyway, because I don't make threats that I don't intend to keep. Chad's polite mask slipped off then, as I knew it would. I'd been hoping he was smart enough to hightail it out of there when I made my threat, but my hope was clearly misplaced, especially since there were no witnesses to his behaviour. His eyes darkened and he snarled, "You fucking bitch!" In a moment, he was halfway over the desk and I shrieked. I stumbled backwards just out of reach as he lumbered towards me, sporting a tent in his pants that told me he enjoyed chasing me into a corner. In an absolute panic, I ran down the stairs to the basement, stumbling and falling the last few steps and sprawling out onto the concrete. A deep pain flared up in my arm as I landed on it, and I knew instantly that it was definitely sprained, maybe broken. I could hear Chad pounding down the steps and I crawled into the darkness, my legs shaking too hard to support myself. I had just made it past the little circle of light. He must have turned it on before he came down, when his hand shot out and caught me by my ankle. He was freakishly strong, although I shouldn't have been surprised given his physique. He clamped his hand down so hard I thought he might actually snap my ankle bone. I screamed again as I tried to pull myself away from him, but my attempts were futile. I heard him panting hard in arousal as he pulled me back. "Filthy little slut. Been teasing me all these years. Now look what it's gotten you," he muttered, falling on top of me and pinning me down. I thrashed and yelped as he fumbled with my blouse, cursing its buttons. And then, just then, I got that feeling again. That feeling of being watched. This time, it was much stronger than before. I instantly froze, suddenly feeling a great danger surrounding me, a danger other than Chad. The air in the basement seemed to have dropped a good 10 degrees, and I could see puffs of his rotten breath forming above me. On instinct, I began to strain my eyes, looking past his hulking body into the darkness. Even as he undid the last button and reached for my bra, there, in the darkness, something was moving. It was as though the darkness in the room had become liquid, and it was shifting and twisting. My breath caught in my throat, and I barely felt Chad's hands on me. I'd gone silent when I sensed the disturbance, but now I began to make strange, wheezing noises as the liquid darkness moved towards us. Chad didn't ask if I was okay or what was wrong. I don't think he even noticed. He was too busy trying to get me out of my slacks. He never saw it, but I did. It had black fur, which was probably why I had never seen it before. Its body was absolutely massive, pushed along by 4 long, spindly legs. It looked something like a spider, but from the way it walked, its body was obviously heavy because the legs did little more than drag it forward. Its body scraping along the ground. I noticed that its legs ended in a sharp claw, making each into something of a spear. I couldn't scream. I wanted to, but I couldn't. As I lay there under the body of my would-be rapist, I was dimly aware that he hadn't quite succeeded in declothing me yet. I saw one of its front legs snap forward. It had been lumbering forward toward us so slowly that I almost thought it was incapable of speed. Apparently, I was wrong, because in the time it took me to blink, its leg managed to spear through Chad's chest, poking through the other side and showering me in blood. I gagged. Chad's eyes were wide open, staring at me in utter confusion, as though he thought I was the one who did this. In reality, I was just as surprised as he was, especially when the leg began to splinter apart into smaller appendages, goring him from the inside out. In absolute horror, I crawled backwards, bumping into some boxes behind me. The creature dragged Chad's still struggling body backwards, towards its bulk for extracting its limb. With great effort, it pulled itself up on its legs. Now I could see its belly. Well, what should have been its belly. I watched its fur pull back to reveal several rows of jagged yellow teeth, pointed just slightly outwards. Its maw was larger than my torso, and I watched as it lowered itself down on top of Chad. I'm glad that I couldn't see what exactly those teeth did to him. Most of my vision was blocked by the black furry body, but I did manage to see the blood. The amount of red that covered the floor and coated the beast gave me a pretty good idea of what was happening. I seem to recall that Chad's screams went on a great while longer than I expected them to. Eventually, the thing finished feeding. The sickening crunch of Chad's bones stopped, and it settled itself on the floor once more. Its legs began to drag its body forward as it crawled to me. Tears were coursing down my cheeks as I thought about what had happened to Chad. I never really planned out what kind of death I wanted, but I knew this wasn't it. I was shaking so hard the boxes behind me started to rattle as the thing crawled towards me at an apologisingly slow pace. It stopped just in front of me. I found myself frantically searching for eyes, but I found none. I had an awful moment where I wondered if it could smell me. And then, something amazing and unbelievable happened. It lifted itself up just a bit and spit out a wrapper, a Skittles wrapper. There was a long moment when neither of us moved. The black creature was waiting for me to do something, and I was waiting to do it. Eventually, I mustered up enough courage to reach forward and pick up the wrapper. As soon as I did, it turned itself around, dragging its heavy body back to the corner it had been hiding in. I sat there for a moment longer, staring alternately at the wrapper and at the mess of blood the beast had left on the floor, splattered with the occasional eyeball or tooth. I stared and I thought. Eventually, I stood up. I walked on shaking legs up the stairs to the young adults' aisle, plucking Little Women from the shelf. I walked back down to the basement, righting the chair that had been tipped over during my struggle with Chad. I sat down and, in a surprisingly steady voice, I began to read. It was about 2 weeks later that my mum had cleared to come back to work. Well, cleared might be a poor term. It's more that she ordered the doctor to give his consent for her to return to work. Otherwise, she was going to find him and kill him in his sleep. Something to that effect. Hey, the women in my family are scary. What can I say? I decided to stick around for a few more weeks, helping my mum out as she got back to her daily routine. She observed me carefully, probably trying to decide if I knew what she thought I knew. One night, as we were closing, she asked me, "Something happened to Chad? He usually comes in at least once a day, and I haven't seen him at all since I've been back." I shrugged, thinking of the hour I'd spent cleaning up the basement, so there would not be a trace of the incident. Guess I don't know. Maybe he decided to skip town. It does look that way, doesn't it? She said, watching me closely. After a moment of silence, she said, "Would you like to read tonight, or should I?" I answered her with a grin, then told her everything she needed to know. "I think I'll do it tonight. I still need to finish Little Women." My mum smiled at me, knowing that she'd found a fellow conspirator. I know I should go back to my writing, but I'm finding it a bit hard to leave the library now. After all, it's not every day that you meet a new friend. That one went through a lot. I was a bit more upset she insulted the jellyfish in the book, actually. But yes, hello Leo, you got me with a scare there with your follow. Let's give you a shout out though. Can spell it right. There we go. Been playing some DBD. It's awesome. I hope you got some good kills in there, dude. Alright. Is everybody ready for another one? Hope you are. Alright. So this one is called Voices in the Spirit Box by Michael Marks. When I was 17, my mother was murdered, but this story isn't about her. My mother's killer is still in prison for his crime. No, this story is about what happened afterward. About a year after my mother's funeral, my dad started mentioning that she would come visit him at night. He said she glowed in a pure white light and reached out to him with a warm smile on her face. He said she looked just the way she did the last time he saw her, before she left for the store on the night of her life, the last night of her life. My sister and I both missed our mother very much, and we wanted to believe it was true. We did whatever we could think of to try to contact her, but it was only my dad who ever saw her. We just wanted to say goodbye. Ouija boards, spirit boxes, automatic writing, psychics, and mediums. We tried them all, and all proved to be a little more than distractions. About 3 months into our efforts, my dad had his first blackout. He claimed it was just stress, but my sister and I agreed in confidence that it was more than that. He would forget things all the time, talk about old memories out of the blue, and then he started getting those horrible migraines. We didn't learn about the source of it until he finally agreed to go to a doctor. He had a brain tumour. Inoperable. His doctor told us it was the likely source of all he'd been experiencing, including the hallucinations of his dead wife. My sister and I lost all hope of ever saying goodbye to our mum and focused on our dad instead. By then, I was nearly 19 and my sister was 22. She ended up moving back in with Dad and me to help take care of him. Even with treatment, he only lasted 6 months though, which was 3 months longer than the prognosis. When our dad finally passed away, we were both devastated. I can still remember that night so vividly in my mind. The loneliness, the realization that both my parents were gone. And it was worse to realise that in all our attempts to find proof of some kind of afterlife, we'd found nothing. Dad's last words to the both of us were about Mum. She's telling me to come with her. You look so beautiful. So beautiful. My actual story starts almost a year later, though, when I finally decided to move out of my parents' house and in with my long-term girlfriend. Alex! I could hear my sister yelling for me downstairs. She'd moved back in with her boyfriend months ago, but she was home to help me pack up the last of our parents' things for sale or donation. Alex, what do you want to do with all these dishes? I poked my head out of the half-packed room and yelled back down to her. Donate! What? I sighed and went bounding down the stairs, taking the last 5 in a single jump, landing in the hallway. My sister stood in the kitchen doorway and repeated her question. What do you want to do with all these dishes? Donate. Clean your ears, Lily. I could hear you just fine. Are you telling me to clean something? That's a fucking laugh. Lily spun around and went back into the kitchen, talking as she walked. Are you sure you don't need any of this stuff? Nope. Carla has everything we need in the dishes department. I followed her into the kitchen and saw her staring down at a beige plate decorated with a chicken and 2 ears of corn that sat below its feet. It was from our usual dining set. I remembered sitting down to dinner every night to those plates in front of me. I think I want to keep one of these. Lily's eyes had misted over, and I knew how she felt. It was the little things that seemed to catch you. I smiled and walked over to her, placing my hand on her shoulder. Yeah, you should. Save one for me too, okay? Suddenly, we both felt something whiz between our heads at high speed and heard it crash against the far wall just below my mum's old cat clock. Lily nearly dropped the plate she was holding as she jumped back and let out a yelp. We'd both been startled right out of our family moment, and I could feel my heart beating at a mile a minute. What the fuck was that? Lily yelled, setting the plate down on the kitchen table and stepping toward the far wall. She bent down and disappeared behind the tablecloth for a second, before re-emerging with a piece of broken plate in her hand. She had a confused look on her face, one I must have mirrored. We were the only 2 people in the house. No one else could have thrown that plate. On the sliver of porcelain Lily was holding, I could see a chicken's foot raising up from behind that ear of corn. It was from the same set we had just been discussing. You've got to be kidding me, I said, running my head to glance at the cupboard full of dishes and then back at Lily. She shrugged and gave me the I don't know look. That's when I noticed familiar ticking of my mother's cat clock, a sound that I'd become accustomed to hearing for years, had stopped. I looked up at the wall behind Lily and noticed the cat's tail had stopped swinging and its always shifting eyes had frozen in place. It was staring directly at me. I shivered involuntarily and went to help Lily pick up the pieces of the broken dish scattered about the kitchen floor. The plate incident reminded us of all our efforts to contact our mother. In all our attempts, we never saw anything even remotely paranormal happen. Yet here we were, face to face with an event that neither of us could explain. It didn't take long to decide we should pursue it. The incident had also cast doubt on the theory that my father had been hallucinating prior to his death. In our desperation, we eagerly jumped on the small chance to talk to them one more time. I know now that hope can be as dangerous as it is comforting. Lily and I went to our significant others and explained what we were going to attempt. We wanted to give the Ouija board and the spirit box one more try. Carla was open to the idea when I told her about it, and she actually seemed kind of excited. Lily had a harder time with David. As she relayed it to me, she had to drag him along, kicking and screaming. In the end, though, he showed up, and I knew that even if he didn't buy into any of it, he would be there for my sister. 2 nights later, we all gathered at my parents' house. At the time, we were excited, giddy. We had no idea what we were signing up for. If we had, I would have walked away from that place, never looked back. "Is everyone ready?" Lily asked, her fingers already resting on top of the planchette. Carla looked at me, green eyes that darkened into a near black in the dim orange candlelight. She winked at me and put her hand on the planchette next to Lily's. Then I placed my fingers on the other side of the plastic toy and did my best to ignore the disapproving look on David's face. He had reluctantly agreed to be our scribe, writing down the words that might be spelled out during our seance. Lily started moving the planchette around the board in the infinite shape we had always used before. I could feel the same excitement welling up inside me that I'd had the first time we'd tried this. I could see the same fervour reflected in my sister's expression. "What now?" Carla whispered over the board. "Now we ask some questions." Lily held her head high like she was trying to channel some kind of divine energy. My sister always got a little bit too into the theatrics of the whole thing. "Is there anyone here with us?" I took the lead. We all watched the board with bated breath, hoping to feel some movement beneath our fingers. Suddenly, the infinity-shaped motion stopped, and we watched the planchette move slowly across the board towards the top left corner, or stopping at the word yes. "Okay, you guys aren't fucking with me, right? Because I didn't do that." Carla looked at me again. I could see out of the corner of my eye. I was stunned. In the million times we had tried this, nothing had ever really happened at all. "No, we aren't fucking with you." "Ask another question." Lily's voice had gone up at least 2 octaves, and she was smiling like a crazy person. It was the same look she would get on a Christmas morning when we were kids. The joy of discovery and the satisfaction of finally getting what you've been waiting for. "What is your name?" I asked, diving right in. This was going to be the moment of truth. I was surprised at just how quickly the planchette started moving around the board. We called out each letter as the planchette briefly stopped, and I heard David scribing away. ITSDADDY. "It's Daddy." David murmured the words in a voice that contrasted his previously cool demeanour. Lily's hands left the planchette as she slapped them across her mouth. I could see her eyes quickly filling with tears. Carla and David both sat there slack-jawed, and I'm sure my face had a similar look. "Lil, put your hand back on the thing," I said weakly, feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. "Lily, please put your hand back on." She did as I asked, and when her hands left her face, I noticed the smile she'd been hiding. "Daddy, is that really you?" Lily's question choked out through a mixture of laughter and tears. "Yes." The response was immediate. "We miss you so much, Daddy. It's been so hard since you and Mum had been gone." We miss you too. Holy shit! Carla couldn't contain herself any longer, and I found myself smile at the use of the word we. Dad! I couldn't even hope to disguise the excitement in my voice. Is Mom there with you? Yes. My sister, now suffering through full-blown sobs of joy, leaned her head over and rested it on David's shoulder. He stared down at his notepad, reading the words, barely registering that she was there. I didn't know if he was stunned by what he was seeing or horrified at how deluded we all were. David had never been much of a believer. Dad, can Mom talk to us? I wanted to keep the dialogue going. I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow at the response. What are you sorry about? I asked, unsure if I was speaking to my mother or my father. She's too cold. Too hard for her. The smile fell from Lily's face, and the mood of the room became more solemn as David read the last sentence out loud. The planchette continued to move then, without any more prompting. So cold here. So lonely. We miss you. We miss you. It's Daddy. Please help. Please. We need you. After the last you, the planchette suddenly shot out from under our hands, paused just milliseconds over goodbye, and then fired across the room and hit the wall at roughly the same speed as the plate that morning. I jumped up and away from the board in shock. Lily was now sobbing loudly as David held her by but his eyes remained fixed on the board as it was the most alien object he'd ever seen. Carla touched my hand with shaking fingers, and I looked down to see fear in her eyes. I don't understand, Carla said as she stood up. I'm so sorry, baby. She wrapped her arms around me, and it was only then that I noticed the wetness on my own cheeks. I hadn't cried since my mum's murder, and I figured something in me had broken that day. Even when Dad passed, I didn't cry. Now, though, in the moment, tears finally came. We tried to contact my parents all night, but the planchette didn't move again. We'd hoped contact with our parents would make us feel better, give us some sense of closure, but instead, it had devastated us, Lily most of all. Most days, we would just sit in the living room for hours, listening to the static of the spirit box, hoping to hear a voice. As the weeks went on, Lily became quieter and more introverted. She retreated into herself, hardly speaking to anyone. The conversations with the Ouija board had made an impression on me too, but Lily had become obsessed. I gradually became less interested in contacting our parents again and more concerned about my sister's mental state. And then, one night, I woke from that nightmare to a more real, more horrifying one. I answered my ringing phone to hear David's voice yelling through the earpiece. Alex, your sister just took off. Took off? What do you mean? David's tone was panicked, and I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and tried to focus. Alex, she's been way worse than she lets on. Lily doesn't sleep anymore. She just sits in the kitchen and listens to that damn little radio. The spirit box? Yes, that fucking thing. She says she can still hear your parents talking to her. I want to believe her, man, but I sat for hours with her one night and didn't hear a single thing. Jesus. Alex, I'm scared for her. Tonight she was listening to it and talking back to it. Her voice woke me up. I couldn't understand exactly what she said, but she was crying, and then I heard her bolt out the door and slam it behind her. She went back to our parents' house. It wasn't a question. I could feel it in my bones. I may not have known the full extent of what was happening, but I did know that something very, very bad had just happened to my sister. She couldn't cope with what the Ouija board had told us, and after all these years of suppressing her sadness, she had just cracked. You think? That's what I was thinking too. I know you have keys, man. Can I meet you there? I think we need to get her help. I sighed into the phone, knowing he was right. Lily may never forgive us, but I was quickly becoming convinced that she needed professional care. The weight of the decision to admit her somewhere felt smothering. I looked down to Carla, who was awake, staring warily out the window, with lines of worries etched on her face. Yeah, let me just get dressed. I can be at my parents' in about 45 minutes. Let me see if I can talk to Lily. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to head over now. I'm a lot closer, so I'll let her know you're coming. We hung up, and I relayed the entire conversation to Carla. Despite my best efforts to keep her safe at home, she insisted on going with me. And when I protested, she challenged me to try and stop her. 10 minutes later, we were in the car heading to my old house. The argument with Carla had delayed my departure, and we actually arrived at the house more than an hour later. Both Lily and David's cars were parked in the driveway. So I parked on the street, and Carla and I headed to the front door. I noticed as we climbed the porch steps that no lights were on inside the house. The front door was slightly ajar, and I took a deep breath before pushing it all the way open with a creak. Beyond the door was utter blackness, a seeming void instead of a welcoming foyer. I had never seen the house this dark before. As I let my eyes adjust, I listened intently for any sound. All I could hear was the clicking of the spirit box rapidly changing channels through the soft static. I finally stepped inside and made my way down the hall, taking Carla's hand as she followed behind me. "Lily!" I yelled, and I heard the acute fear in my weak, shaking voice. I couldn't understand why I was suddenly so terrified in my own house, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I hugged the walls until we rounded the corner into the softly lit living room. A dull blue light was emitting from somewhere, and I could see Lily sitting in front of it. She was cross-legged on the floor. The spirit box was in front of her, and her head was hung between her shoulder blades, blonde hair covering her face. "Lily," I whispered, squeezing Carla's hand, as I let go to walk toward my sister. I was halfway to her when Carla suddenly flipped on the light switch and screamed. I was blinded at first and disorientated by the screaming, but my eyes gradually made the adjustment. I blinked a few more times and found myself still facing Lily, who had remained sitting on the floor with the spirit box in front of her. Her forearms were cut wrist to elbow, and she was sitting in a pool of blood. David was there, lying next to her, stabbed God knows how many times in the chest, neck, and face. I could only assume it was him, as the body was unrecognizable. I heard Carla take off down the hallway and slam the front door as she left the house. As I adjusted to my state of absolute shock, I scanned the room calmly before hysteria set in. The walls were covered in writing, the same 3 phrases over and over again, written in fresh blood. "It's Daddy. We miss you. We need you." I snapped out my trance suddenly and stumbled over to Lily. I begged every god I had ever heard of to let her be alive somehow, to let me save her. I choked on my prayers as I rescued Lily's limp body from the crimson pool and screamed for Carla to call 911. Her skin lacked the warmth of life as I pressed my face to hers, begging her to wake up, my whispers falling on dead ears. I cried. The soft static of the spirit box played the score to my pain. How many eternities passed before Carla returned, I do not know. But I saw her there, finally standing in the doorway, talking to emergency services and staring at us. I cradled Lily's body and rocked back and forth. I could tell from the look of disgust and pity set upon her face that Carla couldn't hear the sounds coming from the spirit box. "Alex, it's Mommy. We need you." It was faint, but it was her. My mother's voice was unmistakable. A year later, when the detectives finally called to let me know they were releasing my sister's things, I brought the spirit box home. I didn't let Carla know that I had it. She had never quite recovered from what she'd seen the night of the murder/suicide. The media had called Lily's case a tragic descent into madness. Carla and I couldn't have agreed more. But sometimes, late at night, when Carla is asleep, I slip out of bed and sneak into the living room. I pull the spirit box out from behind the stack of books, and I turn it on, just for a few seconds. But in those moments, I listen closely to the clicking sounds of the radio, quickly scanning through the static. I strain to hear their words, the voices of my family, and sometimes I hear them. In the few seconds I've heard them say many things. They tell me that they need me, that they love me, and that it's lonely without me. They claim that it's cold. They beg me to join them. Lily says that it's easy, and that I should bring Carla with me. They say we'll all be happy there. But there is something behind those voices, something that sometimes bleeds through. Lily must have either ignored the sound or blocked it out completely. Beneath their warm invitations and desperate pleading, I can hear something laughing, something inhuman. And that is the last story I will be reading for you guys this evening. I hope you've enjoyed that. I do enjoy spooky season. So many good books to read. I hope you've enjoyed my tales today. Do let me know if you do have any stories you think I may like. And we can have a look. See who we are going to raid today. I told you I had somebody planned. Be sure, if you haven't already, to come and join my Discord server. We love having new friends here. Let's pop that up there for you. But you'll also find it in my page. Today we are going to visit a lovely VTuber named Darius today. Sounds very nice, doesn't it? Let's see. BT. I do want to thank you so much for coming to my stream today. It means a lot. And we're still on the road to affiliate, but when we get there, there will be lots more fun things coming your way. Hopefully soon we'll do some react videos. We'll have some more guests on and do some more Would You Rathers. And those are fun. If you enjoy the spooky times, do let me know and we'll continue them. But I'll be doing story times and fun times here for quite a while. But I really want to thank you all for coming to stick by me today. Every view counts and it helps boost the channel, and I appreciate you. But we are gonna start a raid and go over and see Darius. And we'll raid him now. Take care, guys.